Okay, good evening, everybody. How is everyone doing? Hope everyone is well. Hope everyone is okay. And we're back to the usual, well, I was going to say we're always at the same time, but the usual day of the week. We're back on a Tuesday. So thanks again for joining us. It's been a crazy eight days, really, since we were last live. I mean, England lose in the finals of the Euros, which, yeah, was a bit painful but expected. We had a pretty interesting event on Saturday night as well. Had a Trump rally, which we will probably talk about a little bit. I don't want to get too much into that because I know how much politics can divide people, but it certainly had ramifications for sort of what we're seeing in the cryptocurrency market. We've had FUD from last week. We've had Hopium from this week. And it's kind of a bit of a, where do we really stand? Have we turned the tide? Are we able to, start being proud to own crypto again? Or is this actually just a relief bounce from a sustained amount of FUD, which couldn't last forever, but this could also turn out to be short-lived? Obviously, we're going to go through and talk about those today. There is a little bit of news to get through. I think quite a bit has happened. I will skirt over that as quick as I can. I do want to talk about the change in sort of circumstance, if you will, what's sort of befitting certainly America in terms of cryptocurrencies and knock-on effects that may have. Again, I'll try and get through that as quick as I can. And then we'll have a look at some price action. Obviously, we're going to look at BTC. We'll have a look at our favorite altcoins. We're going to talk about Tau, but I want to talk about Ethereum as well and a few others. I didn't get any questions ahead of time this week, so if you do have any questions, please feel free to dump them into the chat. And hello to everybody in the chat. And I'll try and answer those as best I can. But we will try and do this in an hour. I'm kind of enjoying these shorter versions and run-throughs, so let's try and stick to that. So without any further ado, let's just dive straight in, and let's move that out of the way so I can actually see what I'm doing. Okay, so Bitcoin. Yeah, Bitcoin's had a pretty good... Well, this looks very positive compared to perhaps what it is, because this is the weekly chart we see here, 2 solid green candles, and that looks fantastic. But actually, that doesn't really tell us the whole picture, because that candle that we see right now, still got 5 days to go. We certainly can't be counting that one. And last week's green candle actually only turned green 23 hours before the end of the week. So it's actually probably shorter than that, but certainly the momentum shifted around about midnight on Saturday night following the attempted attack, assassination, whatever term you want to use, on President Trump's life. We saw an immediate reaction in the price of Bitcoin. So that's actually made it look quite healthy. But actually, taking all that to one side and, you show me the chart and I'll show you the news. Was this just a logical area to turn around? We had this little shoulder in around 52, 53,000. And that's kind of where we wicked down to, 53,000. We draw ourselves some sort of trend line hits on the weekly. I'll make it look better on the daily later on. But you can kind of see that there definitely is some form of support, even in a downwards channel down there. So actually, maybe this was just a logical place for us to find some relief. Now, it has been good. And for those of you that have had the courage, like I have, to finally start looking at my Delta app to see where my portfolio is doing, yeah, I'm seeing some green for once, which is kind of nice because it's been a month and a half of red. But, we haven't really done anything spectacular. We're back at 64,000. We'll talk about levels that we may need to break to beat that. But right now, all we've done is just gone straight back into the middle of this range we've been in since February, March time. So, yes, nice to see a stop to the rot. But right now, in the middle of the range, this could go either way. And we really just need to be on guard. Now, I'm going to try and stay away from being too pessimistic because we've done a few pessimistic talks over the last couple of weeks, and rightly so, because we had 4 red candles in a row. But maybe we actually do get to see a little bit of optimism here. So I'll try and focus on that. But of course, I'm not going to sugarcoat things. And should things look slightly different, I think it's only our duty to talk about that. Now, my recent favorite, but everyone else is in the chat's favorite for the last few months, if not year, Casper. Casper continuing to do very well, continuing its uptrend, defying the rest of the crypto market. And again, 2 solid green candles in a row. And that level at around about 15 cents seemed like a good turning around point. My only concern at the moment, and I will drop this down onto the daily just so we can see it. Yes, I know there's a nice low test, but we won't talk about that till the day closes. All I'm thinking about right now, and again, we'll go into this detail here, is just this range. We've been here before, and it has actually turned us away. And right now, we need to pierce through that and then retest the all-time highs around about 20 cents. Then we can get really hyped up about where Casper can potentially go. And of course, if this candle were to close as it is at the moment, then I would be excited about that low test that we see. But with 5 hours still to go, I think it is slightly premature. Ooh, let's go back onto the weekly now. So Ethereum. Yep, Ethereum's got some big news coming up, and rightly so. We have seen a bounce, but much like Bitcoin, just back into the middle of the range there. So is this going to be the start of further green to come, or are we going to run out of steam? Hitting some important levels, whether they be EMAs, Fibonacci's, you know I'm going to cover those, and start to see a turnaround. So we'll actually have a look at that. And then finally, our good friend BitTensor. So BitTensor, yeah, following on the news of the hack, or the, I don't know what you'd call it. I'm going to call it a hack. We've had some positive price action. Now, for a lot of last week, there was suspicion about whether or not this price action was kind of misleading because not many of the exchanges had opened up for people to be allowed to sell it. And the network was closed for a while until last Thursday, might have actually been Friday, for people to even transfer it. But the network is back open. There are exchanges in which you can sell it. And right now, we have still seen that there is a buyer's market right now. Now, as I mentioned in Discord, there's a level around about 306, which is the 50 EMA, which really needs to be broken to convince me that we're going to get there. And as we'll see later on when we delve into it, the 50 EMA, the last 3 times we've hit it, has actually been pretty tough resistance. So that just needs to bear in mind. But the fact that we've gone from 200 to 300 in the space of about 5 days is very promising. I am almost entirely back into Tau at the moment. Got a tiny amount of USDT left to put back in. So yeah, so that's kind of where we are from a price point of view. Is Tau live on Mexi or Binance yet? Unfortunately, I can't access it on Binance because I'm in the UK, and as it's a new cryptocurrency, I'm not allowed to access that. So I actually don't know. As for Mexi, I'm not entirely too sure. I believe it is live on KuCoin. I know Mexi had been holding off earlier on today. Maybe once we're going through this, someone else in the chat might be able to confirm whether or not it is still live. But you're right, Mexi being one of the biggest exchanges for it, and certainly one that people are familiar with because that's where it started out. We want that one live as soon as we can to really see if there are any weak hands that look to sell here. Okay. Let's just try and quickly get through some of the news, and then we'll go from there. As I say, thanks for that one question. But if there are any more, please feel free to send them through. So, last week, it was a bit of a FUD week. I know we ended strong, but we had quite a lot of FUD. Biggest one there was the German selling of their BTC. Now, I didn't really look into this in too much detail. I was just monitoring the wallet. Subsequent evidence, whether or not it's verifiable, has come out to actually suggest that it wasn't the German government that was selling. It was actually a district within Germany, and it was actually even a police force or some sort of force that was forced to sell their BTC as they weren't allowed to legally own it. Regardless, that doesn't matter. Why they sold it, when they sold it, who sold it, doesn't necessarily matter. The big thing to see right now is holdings, 0.007 BTC. And I'm not doing that because it's 007. I'm doing that because it's practically zero. The point is the sales have stopped because there's nothing left to sell. And so this bit of FUD, whether or not it's genuine or not, this fuddy news item that, scared a lot of people last week is over, okay? We can move on from this, and we don't have to necessarily worry about this one going forward. Scroll up to the top, similar bit of FUD that's been talked about since the beginning of July has been Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox moving 140,000 BTC from a wallet, and that was going to then be passed on to the creditors. The creditors would dump it, causing the price of Bitcoin to fall. We saw that at the beginning of the month. We even saw that being talked about last week. Funnily enough, we actually saw that being talked about today. And for any of you that have been staring at the charts for as long as I have today, price has gone up, then it's dropped back down, then it's gone back up again. And part of that movement down was the announcement or the confirmation that Mt. Gox had actually sent 100,000 BTC to exchanges, which could then be passed on to creditors. Now, Kraken have come out. They've notified their creditors that they have received their BTC from Mt. Gox, and over the next 7 to 14 days, they will be passing that on to the creditors, in which then the creditors can do with it as they see fit. So, tried to be used as a little bit of FUD today. Maybe we might see some impact in the markets over the next couple of weeks. The thing about FUD, in my opinion, is the more often you use it in close succession, the weaker it is in actually scaring people. The first time you mention it, people get nervous. Second time, people still get a little bit nervous, but maybe some of them have already moved away. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, it's just diluting it each time. This is the fourth or fifth time in July alone, people have been talking about the implications of Mt. Gox selling it. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that it won't have a severe impact on the market. But the more people talk about it, I just feel like it is just not really having the effect of moving the fear and greed needle like people may expect. But the reality is, the next 7 to 10 days, the 7 to 14 days, sorry, we may see BTC being sold. And that will be directly attributed to Mt. Gox. As far as I'm concerned, sell it all, all right? Sell it all, drive the price down, whatever. We can then put a 10-year FUD item to bed. And that's the key thing, isn't it? Just getting rid of these FUD items and being able to move on in the future. So I hope that it happens. I don't want it to drop too far, obviously, but I certainly hope that it does happen. This was the movement that we had today with the 6 billion leaving Mt. Gox's cold wallet, heading towards Kraken. I think it must have gone to others as well. It's just Kraken's the one that's announced it. They never said how much they got. But it did cause the price to go from about 65,000 down to like 63 or something. So a little bit of movement there. Okay, one of the biggest news items that came out this week was confirmation from the SEC that they required the final S1 submissions to be submitted by close of play today, with an indication of looking to launch the Ethereum ETFs next week, next Tuesday, July the 23rd. Now, this announcement was, well, rumored yesterday. I wouldn't say it had a massive implication on Ethereum's price. Price was already moving up at the time. But we're getting to that point. We're getting to that point where we knew they were coming. Now the SEC is really teasing us with, looks like next week we're going to be opening up. People are speculating it's Tuesday of next week. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. But I'd say we are on the precipice of that going live. And what's interesting, and I was reading this article, and sometimes I have to take these articles with a bit of pinch and salt, but I will go through this one in a little bit more detail. The head of Bybit's head of institutions, I'm trying to find his name down here, Eugene Chung. He seems to imply that actually institutions are more bullish on Ethereum than they actually are, than retail are ahead of the Ethereum launch. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see a flood coming in there, but it's just interesting that we're seeing these positive news articles coming out. So institutional investors are more bullish on Ether than retail investors. The suggestion actually is showing that institutional investors doubled their Ether exposure shortly after the ETF was announced. So it went from 6.54% to over 14%, according to the report. And the report, let me just find where that was, because I did find the name of it earlier. Nope, I can't see it anymore. When I find the report, I will mention it as we go through the article. During that same period, though, retail investors only went up from 7.4 to 9.52. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean much, but the point that we're trying to understand is when the Ethereum ETF goes live, how are the institutions going to react? Because it's an altcoin, so it is more volatile than BTC. As a matter of fact, BTC is just, its trajectory through the seas is caused primarily by itself. Obviously, outside markets may have an implication on that. I completely get that. But Ethereum being an altcoin, actually that can be shipwrecked. I don't know why I'm getting down some sort of nautical theme here, by BTC itself. And so there is some additional risks that go within that. There's a volatility that can go with that, which can be a plus and a minus thing. And so this Ethereum ETF is really going to give a litmus test as to whether or not institutions have any interest in trying to make more money out of altcoins, or whether they would rather stick with that store of value that is perceived to be in BTC. So I like the fact that we are getting information out here that institutional investors do seem to be quite excited about Ethereum. If that is a success, I think that's just going to lead to more ETFs. Solana's obviously already been applied for. We'll see where that one goes. But yeah, so good to see that that is the direction that we're going in. And I just want to end the news one on rumor. Why not? It's not quite news, it's a bit of rumor. But I saw this one and I had to laugh. Mainland China to unban Bitcoin. So there was a rumor circulating around Twitter and other places within the crypto sphere for the last couple of days that repeatedly is saying that mainland China are actually considering unbanning Bitcoin sometime in Q4 of this year. So, I mean, you got to take that report with a pinch of salt, because it's maybe unbanning and some random time over a 3-month period. But still, the importance of that shouldn't be negated or undermined or underlooked, because I don't know if many of you were around, but in 2021, when don't get me wrong, China ban and unban this asset all the time, but when they did ban it in September of 2021, it actually caused a really sharp impact on the market. I'll bring the chart up in a moment, but price fell by 25% over the course of that month, matter of weeks really, in terms, because they didn't just ban the purchasing and selling of Bitcoin, they actually banned the mining of it as well. There was a massive implication on sort of the miners. A lot of them had to shut down and relocate to other countries like Kazakhstan. So we had a massive drop in hash rate and the security and all that kind of stuff for a period, because we weren't talking about, you know, Joe in his grandma's basement mining it here. We're talking about massive mining farms having to shut down and relocate. And if we have a look at the chart, this is the period here, September, and we went from the spike of what, 53,000 all the way down to sub 40,000 just off the news of that. So if they do unban it, this could be another turning point in which we see positive momentum move back into the market. Now, to be fair with China, they could rescind that at any time and cause it to have another downfall. Of course they can. But we're opening it up to, you know, one of the largest countries in the world, of them to be able to legally purchase it rather than illegal means, however they are doing that. But also just the sort of the reputation that will give, the positive momentum that would give to suggest that it's back on the market. So not quite newsworthy. I stuck it in the news section, maybe a bit of tongue in cheek, but there it is. And the final thing that I want to touch on, because we'll talk about where the state of the market is in a moment, is it's unbelievable to think that last week I was talking to you about extreme fear, 25 on the fear and greed index. And yet in the space of 7 days, we're already into greed and quite high into the greed. We're at 65. Extreme greed is at 75. And it just shows you how quickly sentiment can flip, especially in a bull run. There are times where the price moves down, a few negative news stories come out, and people get worried. But when the positive things start to turn around, it's amazing how quickly FOMO can kick in. And we haven't really got genuine retail in at the moment. And that's only going to exacerbate things as and when it happens. We will see more pullbacks in the future, but then we'll start to see the turning around, the FOMO, the people wishing they'd bought the dip, the people bragging that they bought the dip, the FOMO building, and we shooting back into the green side of the fear and greed index. So it is quite incredible. And I think, you know, the fear and greed index, whether or not you like this one, whether you prefer the one on CoinMarketCap, fair enough. One on CoinMarketCap's around about 58 right now. But this one kind of illustrates what I'm talking about at the moment, because don't worry too much about the needle. Have a look at the one in the middle, the historic values, because we're currently at 65. Yesterday we were at 52, but last week, 7 days ago, we were at 27. 8 days ago, we were at 25. And then last month before that, we were actually higher than we currently are at the moment. Just look how quickly this thing moves. Now, that's a great thing, you know, that we can turn around that fearful sentiment as quickly as we can. You've also got to take it with a pinch of salt in the terms of, well, sentiment could swiftly move again, and we could see us dropping down below 50 and into the negative side of that chart just as quickly as we got past it. So it's great that it's doing that. It's always good to have a look at this, see where we go and see how it's moving it. But we've got to be realistic that these things do shift quite quickly. Now, if we bring up the chart, so what day we got down to 25? Actually, 25 was on, that's wild. 25 was actually on Saturday. So leading up to the Trump incident, we were actually at the lowest we've been in 18 months. And then since that turning around, and there's been a lot of other news events, which we'll talk about in a moment, that have helped build momentum on this positivity. But we have basically gone up 40 points in the space of 3 days. And today hasn't even been factored in yet. So could go up even further. Okay. I think we finished that element of the news there. Let's just jump onto sort of the title card, if you will. And this sort of change in narrative of Bitcoin America, this brave new world, if you will. And bit of a history lesson or a bit of a reminder of where things were even a year ago. So I brought up the Security and Exchange Commissions, and we'll have a look at crypto assets and cyber enforcement actions. This is more for history lesson, but for those of you that have been in RT long enough, those of you who've been watching these long enough, you know, end of 2022, most of the way through 2023, America was not a fan of cryptocurrencies. They were stifling innovation. They were, trying to pass laws to tax miners. They were going after anybody that was involved in cryptocurrency, rightly or wrongly. The SEC was very much, everything's a security. It's all a problem. Nothing's going to work. They were stopping staking. You get the point. And it just was a very negative spin on things. I'll come back to this one in a moment. This was an interesting thing. Just key senators or politicians in the United States who are anti-crypto. Now, doesn't necessarily matter about the names. I'm not a politician. I don't particularly follow politics except for who the leader of each of the particular parties are. But just look at some of the key quotes, because this is what was interesting. This was the narrative of basically 2023. This article came out in 2023. So Elizabeth Warren, most of us know who she is. Crypto has become the preferred tool for terrorists. That's been disproven. For ransomware gangs, from drug dealers, rogue states that want to launder their money. That's been completely blown out of water. But that was the narrative that was coming out there. Then we've got call crypto a national security threat. Suggested we should be considering a pause using this as a currency. Then we've got Brad Sherman, Bitcoin. It's not just for narco-terrorists anymore. It's for tax evaders too. Just all of these supposedly educated people having a completely ill-informed opinion of what Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies were used. But this is the sound bites that were being passed out. And even Sleepy Joe, I had to go back into the Bitcoin historian here, but even Sleepy Joe, I don't have Bitcoin and I will never ask you to send me any. I did have to double check that this wasn't a spoof one. Maybe it is and it's been outdone, but you can kind of see. This is when, let me see. No, this would be just leading up to the election. It's probably a soundbite because people were talking about it. But we kind of see now that he was never a fan going into it. And don't get me wrong, Trump has certainly had a change of heart over the last 6 months or so, as he was never really a fan of cryptocurrency when he was president. But we kind of get that whole thing, both sides of the political arena, just making the United States a very negative place for cryptocurrency. And that had ripple effects. We saw it in Europe. We've certainly seen it in the UK, the stifling effect that that's had, certainly with on and off ramping, with being able to actually trade anything, with the regulations that are supposedly coming in. And there was even talk about as being the mecca of Europe, which just, turned out to be absolute hot air. But we went through that all the way. Oh, sorry, I do want to just go back through this. What is interesting, though, is the change and the starkness of the change that has actually happened in the United States. And if we just use the SEC as the first example, look, so we're not going to read through these. We're just going to count them. But in 2024, so in the first 7 months of 2024, where's my cursor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've had six SEC cases in 2024. Let's count how many we've had in 2023. This might take a while. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. 35 SEC-led cases. And okay, some of them may be against people you've never heard of. Some of them are likely against some pretty big bad guys. Actually, I don't, because I think the SEC went after Bankman-Fried in 2022, so we didn't even count that one. But nearly 6 times as many, which just shows you the shift that the SEC themselves have had against cryptocurrency. We've now seen the CFTC come out and confirm that Bitcoin and Ethereum and others are commodities. We've had the SEC dropping cases against securities, etc. So there's a complete and utter shift in the way that it's being perceived, whether that is because they know they're onto a losing battle, whether this was all orchestrated, doesn't matter. I'll leave that for your own opinion to be formed. The fact is that we are seeing the United States massively opening up to Bitcoin and to cryptocurrencies. Now, just have a look at this. Have a look. Next week, it's not even the largest cryptocurrency conference in the world, but it is certainly one of the bigger ones now. Bitcoin 2024 out in Nashville. I think they used to do this in Miami. I might be mistaken. But look who they've got as their prime speaker, Donald Trump. Okay, former President Donald Trump, campaign, what the hell do they call him, candidate for the Republicans now. He's going to go and talk about this. What, a week and a half after he's had half his ear taken off. And he is now very pro-Bitcoin. He's pro the freedom of it. This man here, I'm not a member of Truth, and he's not on Twitter anymore. He's on another social media. But he's gone out and actually said that he wants to back the US dollar with Bitcoin. Now, I'm sure that's just posturing, and he'll realize how difficult that will be a little bit later on, given how many Bitcoin are left and how much debt they're in with the US dollar. But even if he tries to do that, just imagine the implications that's going to have on the price. You've got Robert F. Kennedy, who is an independent, technically still running for the presidency as well. He's speaking there. Obviously, we've got Bitcoin Jesus. Edward Snowden is going to be speaking. We've got Vivek Ramaswamy. I can't pronounce him. But we've got plenty of politicians that are actually coming to this, not just as guests, but as actual speakers. And I dare say that 4 years ago, this would never have happened. Probably even 2 years ago, we would have maybe got one pro-Bitcoin politician to come and speak. But now this is just the case where they're all there. And, just Google the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. You'll be able to go through the list yourself. But it is fairly impressive to see that that is where we are going. Then we believe that, Trump is going to use this speech, obviously this time within Bitcoin conference, to talk about his newfound love for Bitcoin, for what it can do for privacy and for just that sort of freedoms that, is ingrained with American culture, I suppose. But for me, this feels like this could be a real big catalyst to, even if it's only a short-term movement, some sort of movement within price, where you're going to have one of the largest Bitcoin events in the world anyway. So that's normally gets it hyped up over the summer. And then you have someone like Trump, who arguably now is a shoo-in for the White House, given the events that have happened over the weekend. That certainly will galvanize a lot of support. And I'm sure that he can use what has happened there from a campaign point of view. I don't want to get dragged down into it, because there may be people that are hard on the left and people that are hard on the right. And I really just kind of sit in the middle. I'm not a fan of Joe Biden. But anyway, that's not a Democrat thing. That's just a Joe Biden thing. And then look who he's picked as his running mate. So the Donald Trump's vice president pick is J.D. Vance. Now, he's like 39 years old, but he is super pro crypto. I can't speak. Crypto. Thank you, Harry. Try and learn to speak. And he has been, prior to Trump's turning into a Bitcoin maxi, he owns he's confirmed he owns about $250,000 worth of Bitcoin, and has owned that since about 2021, I believe. And he is a massive advocate passionate about the future of AI. But interestingly, and I don't have time to go through it, but one of the things that he's put on his Twitter account, and this again was from earlier on this year, is the risks in AI, and mainly the risks in centralized AI. And he's talking about an open source AI is the way forward. And for all you Tau lovers out there, or for many cryptocurrency related AI projects, open source is the way. So if he really is a fan of this, if altcoins start to catch that fever and be talked about, you've got a man here that is passionate about AI, looking for something to be open source. Well, we all know that there is a fantastic project that can actually really help deliver some of that. So very positive to see. But it's not just politicians that are getting on it. We've got Big Larry, CEO of BlackRock. He went on a news outlet yesterday and was quite open and talking about how he was wrong. And he admits that he was wrong about Bitcoin. He was a skeptic about it for some time. And now he has openly called it digital gold. Obviously, BlackRock are now the largest custodians of Bitcoin. I believe in the world. Maybe someone might correct me on that one. They've certainly overtaken Grayscale. They have more than MicroStrategy, and they're still buying. We'll have a look at what they've been doing over the last couple of weeks in a moment. But that amount of Bitcoin that they now have in their back pocket has taken them to over $10 trillion in assets under management. And here he is, passionately speaking about it. This man effectively represents, embodies Wall Street. We know that they are keen for it. We know for the last 6 months they've been buying this up like no tomorrow. This is just a 10 million one, that's fine. But it's not just that, it's large corporations. So we've got Michael Dell, the CEO of Dell. I believe the 11th richest person in the world. That might be a lie, might be in America. He's rich. Anyway, talking about this, he even tweeted that it was fascinating that Larry Fink was talking about Bitcoin being digital. We've seen him over the last couple of weeks passionately tweeting, talking about Bitcoin again. And again, this is where it seems to be moving. There is that shift, this dawn, a new dawn for America in Bitcoin. And I think that that's the kind of thing that will hopefully rub off in the EU, rub off in the UK. And maybe those restrictions that we've had built up for the last 3 or 4 years in the UK will start to wane, because we are just the lapdogs of America. And if they decide they like it, I'm sure as hell they're going to think that our new government going to want to get on side. They'll probably end up liking it too, which is only good for us. And, convenient, isn't it? That it's at the start of the bull run that people start to like it again. But for those of us that stuck it out through the bear markets, held on, were able to buy, hodl, diamond hand it, whatever you want to call it. Plenty of times I fumbled the ball as well, but I have picked it back up. We hopefully are in that position for it to move forward. I don't know if this will play. Let's see. I won't play it all, but this is Larry talking about it.
You have been a leader in willing to embrace crypto. You have made it so that people can be in Bitcoin. We hear that you are thinking about Ethereum. These are incredible things. Now, BlackRock is not known as a gunslinger by any means, so you obviously must believe that this maybe is an alternative. Is this an alternative in order to be able, because of the deficit, maybe something long-term people should have?
Absolutely. As you know, I was a skeptic.
Yes.
I was a proud skeptic. And I studied it, learned about it, and I came away saying, okay, my opinion 5 years ago was wrong. Here's my opinion today. This is what I believe in today. I believe the opportunity today.
And it goes on for another 2 minutes. But I think that's the point, isn't it? All those senators that I listed at the beginning probably never actually studied Bitcoin. And a lot of people that get into Bitcoin, the first time I heard about Bitcoin, I had no idea about it, studied it. I mean, I did move into it, but it was the more that I studied about it that I realized it's positive. And I think, people like Larry, people like Michael Dell, it's fine to be a skeptic to start off with, but don't let your initial impression of it cloud your judgment, because it's only going to come and cost you in the ass. Imagine if Larry Fink had had this opinion in 2019 and was able to buy bucket loads of Bitcoin at $3,000. That 5-year gap cost him, but he still sees how much that can improve in the future. One problem about that video, which I didn't bother playing to, was Jim Cramer seems to suggest that he is also a fan of Bitcoin, which for any of you that follow Jim, you know that is a contrarian opinion. And that's basically just determined the local top. So we are in trouble potentially on the short scale. But, and I will go into price action a little bit later on. So we had the incident that happened on Saturday night UK time, sometimes Saturday afternoon. Donald Trump, that assassination attempt. And it was amazing. One, that he survived, but it was amazing just what happened with the markets. We'll go through Bitcoin and everything else, but look at the meme coins, especially the Trump-related meme coins. Anyone want to guess at what time the news broke that Donald Trump had one, had an assassination attempt, but two, survived? Yeah, you guessed it. Right here, 11 o'clock at night on Saturday night, prices flew up. Of course, they've stabilized a little bit afterwards. It's not just Trump. Make America great again. Bang, up it goes. But look at this one. Donald Trump, a DJT. Now this, let's call this what it is, an absolute rug. Taking advantage of this back in June, and then it's just been flatlined. But suddenly, people decide, you know what, the Trump name is good to banter around again, and off it went to the races. And we saw this absolute fly up. Again, looks like it's probably rugging now. But the fact is that it was an incredible catalyst for crypto, incredible catalyst for Bitcoin. And that's because of Donald's, I'm going to call him Donald, my pal Donald, his stance on Bitcoin, his changed stance, I admit, but his stance on Bitcoin and where it is. And we now see that ticket of Donald Trump, who is converted into being a Bitcoiner, and JD Vance, who has been one for some time. The fact that they're likely, again, anything can happen over the next few months, but certainly how the polling is going at the moment, likely to be successful come November, we may actually be entering a 4-year period in which the bull run is going to form, with the president and the vice president of the United States being pro-cryptocurrency. And, you know, you don't want to use too many terms that you see on Twitter, but I think most people are suggesting we're not ready for the ride that we're on. And I think that could very well be the case. So I think, you know, for me, we have seen that turning point. It's been building over the last few weeks and months of that turn of change of stance within cryptocurrencies of the United States. I think we've turned that corner. I think we're getting a lot more clarity in terms of SEC direction, in terms of where they want to take bills and all that going forward. And now, as I say, potentially 2 crypto fans sitting in the Oval Office, that should certainly help our case. But, you know, hey, that's just my opinion. I'd love to see what anyone else has to say on that going forward. And let's, whilst people are pondering that, transition through to the next thing we're going to talk about. And have a drink of water as well. Okay, can we get all of this done in 25 minutes? Let's see. So, Bitcoin ETF flows. So what we've seen, I don't know, since the 5th of July, we've seen positive net inflow. So we had a bit of a tough time towards the end of June. June was a bad month for Bitcoin inflows. But we've seen that turn around. And for me, my biggest on-chain analytic assessment that I look at right now is what are BlackRock doing? And BlackRock are buying. BlackRock have been buying continuously, pretty much. But certainly for the last 5 or 6 days, they have been buying. And we've seen now, as I say, I think they have over 300,000 Bitcoin. But we'll have a look at that in a moment. Obviously, we don't know today's figures, so this could all change. But the fact of the matter is that certainly for the last 7 trading days, they have been not just net inflows, but large net inflows. We go on to this tracker here. Apologies, it's in white. I know we're with black and white, but I wanted to show you the chart, which is using the black bars here. Again, we're starting to see these are picking up. They're picking up strong as well, which is what we want to see. And then if we just put on BlackRock, this is where we are. Yeah, 314,000 BTC as of yesterday. And that's what I'm looking for. This is my on-chain analytics now. And what are BlackRock doing with theirs? And they ain't selling. They're buying. Okay, they have a couple of breathers, but they're buying generally. And as long as they're buying, I'm going to be happy. Now, we can get some idea of what's happening today. This isn't the complete picture, but we can see, let's have a look. Grayscale have sold or withdrawn 146 BTC, and we've seen Bitwise, 21 shares, and Fidelity kind of bought in and around 1,000 BTC. That's not the full picture, but we are seeing that it does look like so far that we are having positive inflows today, but considerably less than we've seen over the last few days. But hey, I'll take it as long as it's got a plus in front of it. All right, let's get into some price action. This is it. Yep, we know it. We talk about this every week, so I'm not going to explain what it is, but this is just the big picture. Right now, we've had this sweep down, taken out. I mean, it went all the way down to, you know, this 0.5 level on the fibs at 5.3. That was on Friday the 5th. But even last week, you know, last Monday, yep, when we went live, we were down at pretty much the low 54s. And then from there, we've just been able to just build from it. We've shot up and we've kind of broken through. And what is the most impressive thing about today, people will have a look and they'll see this high test. And that's what they'll be excited about. But that's not what excites me. Look at that. Look at what it's done today. It's pulled back. It's hit the 50 EMA. Bearing in mind, we've not been above the 50 EMA for over a month. it's come shot back to it, and then the buying pressure from that level has been relentless. And that's the level that this high test has formed from. And we can see the length of that wick with 4 hours to go. I accept. But that's the kind of thing that I want to see. When you're looking on the lower time frames, which we will do later, that's going to look like a fairly decent and healthy pullback. On the daily, I'll be honest, not so much, particularly with how far that has shot up. But all that needs to happen is just a couple more days above the 50 EMA, building that support even around this 63K level before that leg up. Now, last week we swept this liquidation area around here. So we've really got this big point at around about 50,000. We've got this other high point around about 73,000. And the reason this one here is in blue is because we've actually been forming on the slightly lower time frames than what I normally look at, an area of short liquidations in and around 66 to 69,000. We look on high block, it's this chunk here. That is where I've indicated. And that now feels like a bit of a magnet zone. And what's interesting about that is it cuts through this trend line. This trend line, as you know, dates all the way back to January 2023. It's been impressive the whole way. That's my new barrier. You know, the 50 EMA was the original barrier. We've got through that right now. There's kind of not much between it from a fib level between the 63 and the 73. So this is where we're playing with. And it cuts straight through this area of liquidation. And for me, I mean, we don't know how long. If it gets there today, we're talking 68, 69,000. If it takes a week or so, we're maybe talking 70,000. So that kind of 69, 70,000 area, that for me is the target. Whether or not we get through that, you know, that's anyone's game. But this, if we're continuing up, this is the level that I feel like we're being drawn towards, particularly with just those short liquidations that are going to be available for the market maker to take. And then a perfect reason for it to then turn around and for them to build those positions again. So that on a very big picture is where I am looking. One thing to talk about that we should cover, because we covered it 2 weeks ago and it's only fair to talk about at the moment. I saw someone in Discord questioning about it today. So this is the Bitcoin CME futures chart, and this is a bit gappy. This is a bit bitty. And that is because, for those of you that aren't aware, this is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which basically is an exchange that runs from Monday to Friday. So it kind of sticks to the traditional trading times that we would see Wall Street with traditional finance. And so we know that Bitcoin still continues to trade over the weekend, but this gives us a visual representation of where the price of Bitcoin was when the market closed, and then where the price of Bitcoin is when the market reopens after the weekend. And this creates gaps. So people talk about CME gaps all the time, especially with Bitcoin, because CME gaps get filled. And I went through this last time. I don't really want to pick out every single one again, but if you ever do load up this chart, you'll see gap here, the wicks fill them, gap there, it's filled, gap here, it's filled there, gaps, okay? There is one that's still open, so 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, gaps fill. But as far as I can see, there is a gap here, down at the capo level of 9 to 10,000. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's going to fill. The point is that they don't always fill, but more often than not, they do fill. Okay? Why do I say that? Because this is the gap at the moment. This is what happened from close of play Friday to reopening Sunday night, is we have this gap, which, okay, it wicked up to there, but technically it closed here at 58,000 and it reopened at 61. Now, given that the price is at 65,000 right now, there is still a live gap at 58,000. And as I've just painstakingly proven, gaps tend to be filled. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to get filled today. It doesn't mean it's going to get filled tomorrow. This is the weekly chart. But it stands to reason at some stage we may see that this gap gets filled. And that goes back to that discussion I was having earlier, that yes, it's been a nice turnaround, but what have we really achieved? We've just dragged ourselves back into the middle of the range, which we've been in for the last 3 months. And so whilst that is positive to see, and we had a clear point in which we have bounced off, maybe we revisit that a little bit later on. Maybe we just continue this trending sideways over the summer, and this just is one of the upticks whilst we do that. So I don't think I'll keep on coming back to this one, but for you guys, if you want to draw it on your chart, 58,000, 61,000, there is a CME gap. If you don't know about this chart and you want to find it, you just go into Trading View, you type in BTC1 apostrophe, wherever apostrophe is. Why is that not there? And there it is. You have it on all, don't have it on crypto. You just click on that and that's it. And then it just pops up and you can follow those yourself if you want to. Right. Let's try and get back to some more positive stuff, shall we? That's all right on here, fibs. That's what I wanted to talk about. So yeah, we've got our standard fib that we've been drawing previously. So from here to here. And we've seen generally that's worked quite well, certainly over the 4 or 5 month period. And look at what we're running into right now, 236, right there, okay? So we've had that bounce down to the 5. To be fair, we ripped through the 382 at 60,000. And we're currently today having a little bit of a battle about 65. I want to just mark these lines to the side though. Okay, so one there, one there, one there. These may not be 100% accurate, but they'll do. Then let's get rid of this fib. And let's have a look at the move from the other point of view, okay? From the local top to the local bottom and see what we've got in our way going forward and some of the levels that may be looking to hold us back. So we draw this fib. Let's just draw them so they overlap these lines. And look where we are at the moment. The one fib that we really talk about, the 618. Okay, it's 65,290 according to this chart here. It's right where price has been to today. So we saw earlier on today that we bounced nicely off the 50 EMA, but at the moment we're being held back by the 618. And these have worked quite nicely, you know, in the past on the way down. Certainly the 0.5, the 0.3. I would say even the 236 have worked. So should we turn around from here, should we have a rejection and a pullback, because it has been 4 days of climbing pretty strongly today as well, then I would be looking at, you know, 63, 61 being those levels at which maybe we pull back and it still remain healthy. We start to look to close that CME gap, arguably still healthy, but not the best position to find ourselves in after a decent climb. So there's certainly levels that I would want to consider. This was just to say, we talked about last week, that bullish divergence, which has played out now. So that's played out. Again, as I mentioned last week, we don't know when they're going to play out, but we kind of knew that there'd be some relief bounce at some stage, and that's gone and happened. So, okay, fair enough there. We have a look at it, you know, with a bit more detail in the charts that we like to look at, vector candles and more EMAs. Again, what can we see? So first and foremost, we've seen that pullback off the 50 EMA. It's bounced back up. What I'm also seeing, although it hasn't hit the EMAs, is we're starting to see a cross of the 10 and the 20, which nothing really to get too excited about at the moment. But ultimately, we want to see these not only cross back over, but start to fan out. So it's good that we're seeing that cross. We need it to break. We need these over the next few days to kind of break this sort of 50 EMA level and then start to fan out properly, have the correct setup. So the 10, the 20, the 50, the 200 that we can see. That's going to help build positive price structure and reset those levels to be decent levels of support as we are going up. Let's drop it down onto the sort of lower time frames and just see if we can count any cadence or anything else here. What's interesting with the 12-hour, I mean, we talked about this last week. You know, Monday, would this be a double bottom? Potentially that is a double bottom, so there's a W pattern there. And then are we seeing the start of a rise one on the way up? Might take some time for this one to sort out, but we're certainly seeing a good right-hand side of this W, positive move out there. We don't know when it's going to happen, but what we do know is rise ones tend to finish at some stage. We see an area consolidation. So let's just say it happens now. What would we want to see? We'd want to see it pull back down, maybe to this 50 EMA as it comes out, in and around that 61,500. Taking out the vector candle there. Also having a look at some of those fib levels that we previously talked about. I think that would be very positive for us to see. Build off that and then kickstart another move up. So I'm not saying that's going to be turning around now. 12-hour, so, you know, it's a longer time frame, maybe a couple of weeks before we start to see that really play out. And it is the first element of it. But what we can see now on the 12-hour is we are potentially starting a reversal. Why do I say potential? Because yes, let me just get rid of all this actually, and then I'll redraw it. Why am I saying that this is a potential reversal? Well, we've cleared that there. 62,000 was the previous local high. And prior to that, we'd been making lower highs and lower lows. Well, yes, okay, we made a lower low. You could argue, I suppose. I mean, that's not there, but we made that first, sorry. Let's just get rid of that. Higher low there. I'm not really counting that one, to be honest. You can if you like. But what we've done by breaking this is wherever this now closes, it is going to be a higher high, which is great. But that doesn't mean we start the fireworks straight away, because for it to trend to be confirmed, we'd then need a close, for me, where I'd say, somewhere in and around above 58. So we could still close the CME gap and technically continue an uptrend. So we'd want to see that one, and then we'd want to see a third confirmation somewhere, as long as it breached that 65 as it currently stands level. Then we could say that actually we have reversed the trend. We are moving in a positive direction. So that's where we're looking. They're the extremities of where I would see. Hopefully it'd be in and around where I talked about that 50 EMA, tying in with a consolidation period after a rise one completes before we move up. But it's just showing you here that 58,000 could still happen, close the CME gap, and still remain bullish. Might hurt our altcoins while we do that, but there we go. Okay, let's clear these drawings again. Let's go down to some lower time frames, see if we can see anything else there. Down on the 4 hour. I mean, I think on the 4 hour, do I want to call it? I'm not sure. I do think we got the W there. Gone up to this 50 EMA. I'm not sure that's a long enough consolidation period for me. So again, much like the 12 hour, I'm probably thinking that this is where we're going. But can you see what I was talking about on the daily, wanting these EMAs to line up? Well, now we've got that. So let's just clear this. So we're starting to see, of course that happened. Starting to see these fan out. We've got the 10, which is the sort of light blue, the 20, which is the red, the 50, which is the dark blue, which has also got the cloud around it. Now, we're on the 4 hour, so we've also got the 200 and the 800, which technically at the moment are above the 50, but that won't take long for the 50 to catch up there. Then we'll have the 200 that will re-overtake the 800, and suddenly we're fanning out into a much better structure. These EMAs can then act as support rather than resistance as we're going through. And you can kind of see in the downtrends, for those of you that haven't really noticed this kind of thing before, that when they start to fan out there, they do act as better resistance. It just takes a while for us to break them, and then we do break them. Now it's on the 4 hour, so they do interchange quite a lot. When we see those on the daily, it's a much better picture for market structure and how we go. But again, even in this downtrend, we can kind of see they're holding them up. So the fact that we are starting to see these turn around, positive thing, but we've still got a bit of work to do there. Okay. So yeah, so I think that's kind of where we are with Bitcoin. Is there anything else on the 1 hour? Not really. I mean, we've got that W, probably is a rise 1 there pulling in, and then a strong rise 2. So maybe we're getting towards the end of a rise 2 here. Problem with this one, we've left a lot of vector candles in the way. So again, no surprise that we may end up breaking down. Now, on the 1 hour, we do lose a 50, a lot more than we do on some of the higher time frames. But anyway, that's where we are with that one. Let's have a look at Ethereum. So I mentioned about Ethereum. Obviously, some big news and potentially a big event happening next week. And we can kind of see, do you know what? Just go back to Bitcoin, because one of the things I did want to talk about, clean one if we can, sorry, was just, because I'm going to mention it on Ethereum. So I will draw it roughly here, and I'll draw it better on Ethereum. But basically, it kind of makes sense now, where you can see that line that's been drawn, why we bounced. We had right at the beginning of this move, bit of support. Then we had the drop down at the end of April, beginning of May, turned into support. Now we've had it down here, it's turning into support. Now we are making lower lows on each of those, but this is a classic bull flag pattern. Taking a while, but it is a classic bull flag pattern. So is it just now that we may see that move back up here, get to that 69,000 again, level we talked about in terms of easy wins for market makers and short liquidations before we start to see it move back down. And again, then we go there, closing that CME gap, taking ourselves to a new local low, and a lot more pain and FUD on the way, but still ultimately a bullish pattern on the wider things. And this is just the boring summer that's playing out, when the markets come back proper in September, we lead into October and away we go. So I should have spent a bit more time talking about that earlier. But Ethereum's kind of showing a very similar pattern, in my opinion. Obviously, it's had a lot better news to go off. Whether you want to do it there or, pull it sort of under there, or you want to join the wicks. However you want to do it, I'll leave to yourselves. But you can kind of see, I'm going to stick with the first one because it looks more like what the BTC is doing. And we've got this right here. And yes, okay, over this period, we've actually had fundamental news that's helped to drive the price up. So we had the shock ETF push end of May or middle of May, which drove the price, resoundingly up, but we saw the rejection point fallen quite hard. And now we've seen this bounce back up. 1, ETF rumors again. 2, just being able to benefit from the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency move. We draw that fib again. It's like we did with Bitcoin. Look what we're running smack back into again, 618. Now, I have a little bit of a concern with Ethereum because it's trading under significant fundamental news. Why is that important? Well, you go back to Bitcoin. What happened after we launched the ETFs? Hey, we fell away first, then we rallied hard. Okay, so we had a buy the rumor, sell the news event. It went live and we fell away. Well, right now, Ethereum's on the precipice of a strong move up. Arguably, yes. But running into the golden ratio, the 618. And okay, we've got a few days for this to be able to move, potentially even a week. But if we start seeing ourselves stumbling in and around this level, my concern is that actually that happens initially on the launch of ETFs. Like what we saw with Bitcoin, price goes down. Now, that's fine. Look, if it happens, we've seen the playbook from Bitcoin, just buy it. If you're a fan of Ethereum and it does start to sell off there, just buy it because likelihood is it's going to turn around. And that's just something to be mindful of. But again, we may see this as falling, all the way down sub 2,800 before we find some form of bounce again to take us back up and then hopefully onto new all-time highs. But from the Ethereum point of view, that's certainly something I'm looking at. DOT. So DOT's maybe forming, you're going to see this on a lot of alts, but potentially some sort of bottoming pattern. I think Bijan's put in Discord about how the Russell 2K is performing at the moment, a lot of green candles. The correlation between the Russell and alt season's pretty good. We saw last week when we brought it up, the alt season indicator, still at the moment just slightly above Bitcoin season, not quite in the full neutral zone, but so maybe we've got to see that move up. Where was I? But DOT potentially forming some sort of double bottom. Let's see, where is it? We do see quite a lot of noise in and around where we are at the moment. So, I'm already in DOT. I ain't buying any more, but I want to see what it does here because we're kind of at a bum line. And, we've been here before and it's turned around and you kind of see what has happened there. And again, if you want to do either the large drop all the way down, Kansas takes it to 236. So really, I'm looking, let's just call it 675 just for ease. That'd be nice. But if you want to take it from a local drop, maybe here. Yeah, that 250, that 5 level, on the fib kind of ties in with the top of this area here and an area where we've seen it turn around before. So this one, I even want it to break the 618. So I'm actually now revising it from 675 to at least 680, closing above that, building off that, and up it goes. That's quite a small fib retracement that we've drawn there. But, positive. I haven't bothered talking about it. Maybe I'll do a video. But we have had Polkadot decoded last couple of days. So there has been a lot of bullish fundamental news that's come out, which maybe that's just impacting Polkadot's price as well. So maybe that dies off. We do start to see that turnaround, but that's where it's at. Tau, we talked, let's go into this one. So we talked about Tau, and yesterday, it was nice to see that move up, and it's good, positive to see where we are at the moment. Yesterday, we did break the 50 EMA, but before the candle closed, we were back down below it, and we've really been struggling in and around this level. And as I mentioned, 1, 2, 3 times through the 50 EMA on this downtrend, we've kind of lost it. At some stage, I do expect us to end the downtrend. Of course, I do. And to do that, we're going to need to break the 50 EMA. And then I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable about it. But unfortunately, with trading, with following financial stuff on TA, once you break one level, there's always another level that you got to worry about. And that's still true here. Once we break that 50 EMA, then we start to run into the golden ratios. We're talking about 343, 400, 460, and arguably, I mean, you need to be breaking 430 just to get over this element here, in which we can maybe talk about a trend reversal. So 50 EMA, this trend line, then the 382, then the 5. It's a lot of work, and we haven't even talked about actually the 200 here as well. So there's still quite a lot of work for Tau. I think it's going to pop at some stage. We've not even drawn the compression that we've talked about for a while as well. That actually is probably playing out. Let's clear this and have a look, shall we? Let's get it on a blank chart. So we've had... Oops, don't know why I did that there. Maybe try and redraw this. Actually, I also thought it was a bit of a compression, but I must be seeing things because it ain't a compression now. Not really. Anyway, okay. So it wasn't a compression, but it is a downward channel that I expect at some stage, a bit like a very big bull flag, I suppose, it to break. But this is just showing you exactly what I saw before. And we do have it. I mean, you could argue, I suppose, and if we really wanted to try and find a compression that is playing out, we had that there. And potentially, well, I don't know why that did that. This down here. But again, let's bring this one. May look a little bit better. But I think I'm just searching for it there just because I said compression earlier. But anyway, I like what I've seen in terms of the move. I think there's still some fundamentals they just need to clear up to make sure that we are in that positive side of things. But we are at the battleground on the 50 EMA right now. And so I'm just sitting on it. I have my final buy order set at 273. And I was kind of thinking we might see a rejection here, back down, caught up at some of these EMAs before we move back up. Because it has been 3 or 4 days of positive price action. So yeah, but that's just what I'm looking at right now with where we're going. CAS, we talked about earlier, but again, it's just, for me, it's just looking strong. Again, we've broken EMAs. We're using the 10 and the 20 just as a staunch kind of support. And even when we lose it, the 50 EMA has not failed us for months now. And then again, nice. I mean, it is a blue vector candle, so you could argue that volume is slowing down. But with the candle that we got here, 4 hours to go, still looking very good in terms of a low test there for a move up. And I'd just like to see us clear this 18 and just really get away from it with a candle close and then start to move up. Sorry, one of the things I did want to say about Tau. Now, I'm just going to say this about Tau. I don't actually think it's going to happen, but let's just have that conversation because a lot of us are saying that we're not going to lose 400 and we're not going to lose 300 and we're not going to lose 200. We didn't lose 200. Thank God we didn't, eh? But I put this on the weekly and we've talked about this before. I can't ignore, and I wouldn't do anything about it, but shoulder, head, and we're starting to form it. And look where it was perfect. It hit the neckline of the previous shoulder to form another one. So I don't think even if we do see the right shoulder form, I don't think it's going to massively play all the way back down to 39 or anything like that. But it's remiss of me not to at least mention that I am at least watching to see what happens when we get to things like 350, 340, some of those levels that I talked about at the 618 and some of the previous highs. Because if we struggle to clear those, we get rejected. It just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. People start to see the move and maybe think that they need to get out. So I mentioned that just there. NIR's had some very strong movements over the last few days. And unlike a lot of that have, got back into the middle of the range, this one has cleared it. But 5, 6, 7, 8 candles in a row green. I'm expecting some form of pullback. I'd like that pullback to be 550, maybe about this noise here. And again, are we running into any trouble? Okay, we got to about 650 before we run into 618. This isn't the cleanest, to be fair, because I think the move up's been so sharp, but there is some sort of, on the way down, some sort of respect that's been played to those levels, but certainly no respect has been played to any of them on the way back up. But you go on to 12-hour, maybe down on the 4. Again, some sort of like bottoming pattern there. I think you go to, I mean, Casper doesn't need it because he's already had it link. Don't have the bottoming pattern I was hoping for there. This one's just moved up, and a bit like Ethereum and BTC, it's just kind of moved back into a lot of the noise. And I rebought Link at like $16.5, $17. So since buying it, it's not been particularly good, and I've got to get through that noise myself. But yeah, there's quite a bit of noise at sort of 15.30. Kind of needs to get through. Glimmer, I still own some Glimmer. I actually got around to unstaking it. I haven't actually sold it yet. I thought with, Polkadot decoding, there might be some positivity. And again, some sort of bottoming pattern potentially forming. I'd like to see it close above 24 so that I know that we're at least potentially making some move to the upside. I haven't restaked it in case I do decide to sell the remaining pot to put it in something else. But I decided not to sell the bottom, which is a miracle for me because I normally do. It's just past 9 o'clock, so that's probably close to being it for me. Total 3, looking like a lot of other altcoins that we've seen. Positive move out. It was not so long ago we were talking about the worries of 475 billion, but actually now we're getting up to 640, which is great. Matter of fact, last week we were even talking about 600 being a bit of a stopping area, which we've managed to break through, which again, very positive. But bit of noise here. 700 would be my next target, to be fair. And Bitcoin dominance is actually on the climb, which is interesting to see. And on that, I decided to update this portfolio tier list that we pulled together. Now, I have taken some of them off, people haven't asked about them and I couldn't be bothered updating them. But if there are any that you have and you want me to add onto this list, then please let me know. The reason I mention it, though, is because as I was updating them, what I noticed was, because I update this column here manually, it's rather painful, and the percentage of market cap for altcoins massively dropped off, which obviously reflected, Rich, I'll get to your question in a minute. It's obviously reflected in the market and in the dominance of BTC. But it's actually had a bit of an implication on where I think some of these price predictions will go, because they've had a bit of a killing in where their market dominance is now. And then when I apply and it is a fuzz factor, because it's my interpretation. A lot of this is done on data, but some of it isn't. Actually, the price predictions have dropped quite a bit. And look at BitTensor, for example, because of the fall it's had. I mean, last time I did this, it was 660. It's now 295, and its current dominance has dropped to 0.09. That's a long way off from plus 2%. Some people are touting. I think it'd be lucky to get 10%. 10x to 0.9%. But that's taken us to sub 5,000 now. Those talks of 22,000 seem a long way off with where that's going. So it's interesting that, the pain that we've had through the altcoins, and it's not just that one, it's all altcoins. There's very few altcoins that the market cap had actually increased since the last time I'd updated. And last time I updated, it was only May. So everything's taken a little bit of a revision in terms of where things are going. One thing I will say, whilst the data's telling me 143,000 for Bitcoin, I feel that's really low. I do feel that's low. That's based off a 35% dominance, which I don't think is too far off. So that makes me think if Bitcoin is low there, but it still only has 35% dominance, then actually it might just artificially lift everything, because what I'm not taking into account is where the market cap is. Maybe 10 trillion is not quite right. And you've got to remember that this is an aggregate of the 3. So this 4 trillion min case, the average case of 7 and the max case, maybe the 4 trillion is just too pessimistic. And that's what's driving some of these prices down. So maybe that needs a little bit of tweaking, but I have updated it today for anyone that still uses it. In terms of my portfolio, where it currently sits, so the business still 100% BTC, and I did some pretty good buys for BTC. The low, mid 50,000s, 54, 55,000, beginning and end of June and July. So it helped to top that up. And I think I mentioned last week, I normally only buy like once a month. I actually bought 4 times the end and beginning of July, just because I felt it was such a good buying opportunity. Personal side of things, we're starting to get a bit more rounded. I think the big key player there is the USDT has dropped down quite significantly, and obviously that's been able to bolster the Tau up and my CAS. The rest is kind of, where it is. We've got three big players with Tau near and DOTS kind of representing about 75%, 80% of the portfolio. Bit of BTC. That BTC will be traded at some stage, don't get me wrong. CAS is building up quite nicely, and then we've got Render, Link, and Glimmer. I don't think there's anything else that I own that I should have in that list. No. Okay. And yeah, that's that. I think that's probably it for me. Richard said, where do I store my Near? I store it on my Near wallet. So if you just Google my Near wallet, let's have a look. It's on my browser. My Near wallet. You can stake it through there as well. Yeah, I have to do it through Brave. It doesn't let me do it through Chrome. But anyway, I've stored it on there for arguably years. So I'm not worried about it or anything like that. But yeah. And sorry, my phone's just beeping away, but nothing important there. So that's it for me for this week. I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. This doesn't necessarily need the screen anymore. I do want to reiterate just one thing, obviously, that happened in the community this week with someone losing their entire Tau portfolio, which is obviously devastating. It was a couple of hundred of them as well, caused by an error in judgment in terms of planning in your seed phrase. So I just want to reiterate whilst we're here, there is no reason for you to ever give your seed phrase to anybody else. I just want to be absolutely clear on that. You personally may have to re-enter your seed phrase if you are resetting anything. If anyone ever asks for your seed phrase, do not give it to them. If you're confused by it, send me or anyone else in RT a message, and they'll tell you you're being an idiot. I think I will do a little bit of a security video, just sort of like to freshen it up, because guys, we're at the start of something monumental here. The start of a bull run like most other bull runs, and I'll talk about that next week in terms of where we are at this stage of previous bull runs compared to now. And I tell you, we feel like we're in a good place now. If this bull run plays out like others, it's going to be one hell of a great time to be there. And silly mistakes are going to cost you, and they're going to hurt so much with what you can get in the future. So thanks everyone for tuning in, bearing with me for 60, 70 minutes on your Tuesday evenings. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever, just feel free to DM me or drop me a link in Discord or whatever. Happy to go through those. Again, I'm more than happy to receive real stumping questions ahead of time so I can do a bit of research and go into those. But other than that, all I've got to say is thank you once again for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you all soon. Cheers now.